Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I actually have a book review for you on I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jennette McCurdy. I don't normally do entire videos for a single book, but I felt like this one just deserved its own. It's definitely a little bit different than what I normally read. I'm not someone who usually picks up memoirs. This is probably the first one I can honestly remember ever reading. I do want to start this off by saying I did really love this book. I rated it 5 stars. It was just like a really interesting book, I think, for anyone to read. So I wanted to start this video off by just like giving you a little bit of background on why I picked this book up, because like I said, I'm not someone who normally picks up memoirs. I personally did not know this book was coming out. I had not heard about it at all. I hadn't even seen it like on a book website like for pre-orders or anything, but all of a sudden, you know, when the release date came out, it seemed to be everywhere. I am not someone who has ever really been familiar with Jennette McCurdy. I have never seen an episode of iCarly or Sam and Cat, so I was sort of lost a little bit on that aspect. I wasn't sure if I was really going to like the book or have any interest in the book because I wasn't familiar with Jennette as a person. I wasn't like reading a book about my childhood idol or anything like that. So I was a little hesitant to pick this one up, but I decided after like seeing all the headlines that were coming out of this that I was like, you know what, I'll give it a shot. I will see what it's all about. I should probably say, I have been like a little bit familiar with the sort of Nickelodeon drama that has gone on. As a kid, my one like Nickelodeon show that I did watch was Zoe 101, and I know there was some things that came out even with that show having issues with, I believe it's the same guy who Jennette references in her book. And so I definitely was like aware of like a little bit of like what was going on with that. And, you know, there's been all kinds of crazy headlines coming out with this book, and I think that was what sort of inspired me to pick it up, even though I was not familiar with her as a person. I also, on my Goodreads account, pretty much everyone I follow has given this book 5 stars. It was like everyone that I follow was reading this book at the same time, so I was like, you know what, like I should really pick this one up. So I did, and today I'm going to talk about the book. So firstly, I want to talk about the trigger warnings for this book because there are quite a few, and this is one of those books where I think if there's a trigger warning for something and you're even a little bit hesitant on like if you could maybe read it or maybe not, I would say go with maybe not, because she doesn't really gloss over anything in this book. It's very much like if there's a trigger warning for something, there is probably also like graphic detail of that happening. So the first big one, death of a parent. Her mom does pass away from cancer. It is documented in the book. So, like, obviously if that's something that's going to be an issue for you, I would probably avoid the book. The next big one that I personally think is the biggest one in the entire book is eating disorders. This entire book encompasses her, obviously, life sort of story, and a lot of that revolves around her eating. I would say that was, like, almost the main, like, recurring theme throughout the book. So if you're someone who is going, oh, well, like, maybe I could read about an eating disorder if it's, like, only minorly mentioned. It is not minorly mentioned in this book. It is a recurring thing that is brought up, I would say, almost, like, every other page. And it is pretty graphic in its depiction of that, which obviously is, like, what she was going for with, you know, just being, like, really open and honest with this book, which I think is great. But, like, obviously, if you're someone who doesn't think you can read that, I just want to put that out there, that this probably won't be the book for you. This also does obviously deal with an abusive parent, a narcissistic parent, so if that is something that you are, you know, hesitant about, you may not want to read this one. It also does deal a little bit with alcohol abuse, not as big of a focus on that one, but still something to be aware of going into this one. Before I get into the actual sort of like what happened in this book, I want to talk a little bit about how the book is written. I listened to the audiobook of this book while I was reading the ebook, so I was like following along, and I would probably go the audiobook route if I was deciding between the two. The audiobook is read by Jennette herself, so you can hear her reading the story, and it's definitely, I think, a little bit more emotional that way, and I just liked the overall sort of aspect of her literally telling the story. And so I think that's a good way to go with this one. The book starts out with the first sort of chapter being her in her mom's hospital room. Her mom is like basically dying, and her brothers are there kind of, you know, talking to her and whatever. And that is like the first chapter, and then you flash back after that, and it starts with like the before section of the book, which follows her entire childhood, basically from the time she can remember all the way through to when her mom dies when she is 21. And then you move into the after section, which is like her life after her mom dies and kind of finding herself and who she is post her mom, basically. And I liked the way that that was written, so that you sort of knew what was coming, but like you also were following it chronologically. I liked that it didn't jump around a lot of timeline wise. I found that that was very easy to read and sort of understand what was happening chronologically. So I thought that was like a really smart choice on her part, writing it like that. I've seen a lot of reviews of this book saying that the writing is really good, and I'm always a little hesitant when I hear that with a book, because I feel like that can mean so many different things. Like sometimes that means that it's just like beautifully written, or sometimes it just means something weird, like it's written like as a poem or something. And so I was kind of a little bit hesitant when I was like hearing that, but this one is written, I would say, like a novel. It is very easy to get sucked into it. I know a lot of people I have seen have said that they, picked this up thinking, oh, I'll just start it, and have ended up on chapter 34, like all of a sudden. And I think that that is a product of how it is written. It's very easy to just keep saying one more chapter, one more chapter. Her chapters are very, very short. Most of them are 2 to 3 pages, and so it's very easy to just go, okay, just like a little bit more, a little bit more. And the writing is really well done. It is definitely on level with like a novel. I thought the writing was interesting because, like I said, I've never really picked up a memoir. I have skimmed through books that I think might have been along the lines of a memoir, but this one I thought was interesting because it's written almost in a way that you feel like you're there, but like watching from the outside, kind of like almost like you're her having an out-of-body experience watching it, is kind of like how I would describe the writing. And it was just really interesting. I know I saw somewhere in one of the interviews she did that she is working on a novel, and I was a little hesitant with that when she announced that, because I feel like whenever celebrities, write novels, they're always either like ghost written, or they're not that good, or, whatever. But based on this book, I'm actually excited to see what she can do with that. I think as a writer, she does have a lot of talent in that area, and so I'm glad that she has like found that, if acting's not the thing for her, that writing clearly might be. And I was just really surprised by that aspect because, like I said, I find sometimes celebrity books are really iffy. But I really enjoyed the writing of this. I really enjoyed how it was the shorter chapters, because I think it did sort of break down some of the heavier themes that this book deals with. Obviously, you're kind of getting it in small doses. You're going, okay, this is one moment, and then the next chapter is like moving on to a different moment. So it's a little bit more easier to kind of just grasp and like follow along and not get as like caught up in it, I think, which was nice. And so I really liked that like formatting decision as well. Now I want to talk about the actual content of this book. Like I said, there are a million headlines coming out of this, the big ones being that she was offered the $300,000 hush money, and the other one being that she was jealous of Ariana. Those are like the two big ones that I feel like have been going around. I will say those two things are like very, very minor sort of points in the book. They are not the main focus. Even like I've seen some people be like, oh, if I didn't watch iCarly, would I like this? And like I said, I'm one of those people. I've never seen an episode of iCarly. iCarly is such a very small piece of this book. It's honestly like not even mentioned all that much. It is talked about in the context of like, this is what I was doing at the time, but the focus is more on what was going on in her personal life at that time rather than like what she was doing on set or like what was really happening. There are, of course, the mentions of the creator, which I think, like I mentioned, has been, rumored for years, so I don't think anyone was particularly surprised by that, like, accusation or, recount of what happened, because I think at this point we all know that guy's a creep. That is what it is. And so I don't think there was anything like too surprising in that area, for me at least, because like I said, I was familiar with that sort of situation. The statements about Ariana, I think, were totally justified. I mean, I think if you put anyone in that position where you're working with someone who's supposed to be your equal, but they're getting all kinds of perks while you're told that you can't do any of that stuff, I think that would get on anyone's nerves, like regardless of who the other person was. And I think she's very good at like making it clear sort of in the book she never says she hates Ariana, like, personally, like, that Ariana was, like, a terrible person, or that she, you know, didn't like her because she was conceited, or this or that, or whatever. Like, it's not like that. She, you know, very plainly states in the book, she essentially hated what Ariana represented. You know, she hated that Ariana was getting all these career opportunities and Jennette was forced to stay on the show and act with a box. Like, it wasn't personal, I guess. And I think that that's what's being blown out of proportion in the media, like, oh, Jennette hates Ariana and whatever. And, like, I don't think that's the case. I think, like I said, anyone in that position would sort of feel like that. And, like I said, super minor part of the book. It's probably maybe, like, a page or half a page that even mentions Ariana, and then it moves on. And, you know, people are just, like, taking that and running with it, obviously, in the headlines. The $300,000 hush money is mentioned. It's pretty much exactly what she's been saying in the media. She was offered $300,000 to not talk about her experience with Nickelodeon, specifically with the creator, and she didn't take it, obviously, or she probably wouldn't have been able to put most of what was in this book. And those were, like, the main, like, headlines. Like I said, they're super, super minor parts of the book. It is, like, mentioned, but it's not, like, the main focus. Like, this is not, like, a tell-all of the iCarly set kind of book, and I think a lot of people are sort of getting that vibe, which is just not. It's about her personal life journey. It follows, you know, like I mentioned, her in the years where her mom was basically forcing her to be a child actor, all the way through to when she thought she was going to get her own show and ended up, you know, becoming a co-star and was, like, disappointed by that. Her mom dies. She ends up just kind of spiraling, I think, after that is, like, the main sort of thing that occurs. Her eating disorders get worse. She goes through a string of, you know, not so great relationships with guys, and just, like, the drinking and different things that she was dealing with in her life. And I think it was, like I said, really, really well written. It's very easy to get absorbed into the book and kind of understand where she was coming from in all the aspects. And I just, like I said, I think it was really, really well written. I loved pretty much everything about it. Like, I love the formatting. I love the smaller chapters. I think that was a good decision on their part. I think the actual way it was told was, like, really well done. My only, like, sort of, like, minor complaint about this, and this is just me sort of expecting this and it wasn't there, was I was expecting there to be an author's note at the end of this book. And I guess because it's a memoir, the whole book is kind of like an author's note. But I don't know, I was just expecting, like, some little note at the end from Jennette being like, okay, my book is out and, like, this is blah blah blah. Like, I don't know, I was just expecting something from her at the end and there wasn't, which I thought was, like, a little strange, but maybe that's, like, not common in memoirs, not 100% sure. But other than that, really, really loved it. I think if you can get your hands on a copy of this book, you absolutely should. I know it's super, super hard to find right now. I actually managed to snag a copy from another city near me's library, which was, like, total coincidence because I put myself on the waitlist at my library and was number 102 in line, and this library just happened to get a copy and I caught it right when they updated their system, so I got the ebook and the audiobook right when they uploaded them. So that was how I was able to get them. I do know Amazon Canada, at least, is accepting back orders, I'm pretty sure, for this book. They will ship in 4 weeks, I'm pretty sure was what it said when I checked. Chapters is sold out online if you're in Canada, but they do have the book available in some stores. You can go on their website and see if they have stores near you. But like I said, I do know it's very hard to get your hands on. There is obviously the ebook option you can buy from Amazon, downloads instantly, so that's a good way to get it if you know, are dying to get your hands on it right now. But definitely one that I think is worth the read. Like I think I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I rated this book 5 stars. I don't know how you could possibly read this book and not rate it 5 stars, because it's just so well done. Like, it really is, and I wasn't expecting that particularly. Like, I did sort of see the hype and, like, everyone saying it was really great, but sometimes that just doesn't work for me, and I was surprised how much I liked this, even having no context of, like, iCarly or, like, her career-wise, and I just thought it was really interesting to, you know, even read about, like, what it's actually like to be a child actor, because I feel like we all kind of imagine it in our head as, like, this super glamorous, like, oh, I wish when I was 14 I was, like, you know, on tour and, you know, whatever. And I think this just, like, really shows how much, like, she just didn't want to be anywhere and was constantly being told, like, no, like, you need to do this, you need to wear this, you need to look like this kind of thing. And, like, she didn't care. Like, she didn't want to be there. She like would have traded that probably for a normal like day at school that every other kid was wishing to be in her position. And I just think that that's so like crazy. I mean, obviously I think we kind of know that. Like, I feel like child acting in general is one of those things that we as a society just ignore. We all know it's like kind of a problem, but we don't really acknowledge it. Even the fact there's a part in this book that actually talks about the sort of legalities of a child actor, and the fact that only 15% of their pay has to go into an account for them is insane to me. Like, why are we not at least at 50% for that? Like, that's just so nuts to me. And like, I can't believe that's a thing. But like I said, I feel like it's one of those things that we just look over and don't really talk about, but we probably should be. So anyway, those are all of my thoughts on I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jennette McCurdy. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below. I do new book videos every single week, and I'll see you next time.